A good Monday morning to you, Central Georgia. Thanks for tuning in here at 10:30 for a look at your extended forecast on 13 WMAZ. Plus, we have some big time heat to kick off the work week, really just carrying over the forecast we had to end this past weekend. But then once we get into Wednesday, we have some changes on the horizon. Some of them going to be a bit pleasant, and overall, I think they really should be pretty pleasant, and we'll talk about all the specifics of why. It's just probably going to be our fair share of some messy afternoons. So let's go ahead and head into your headlines first and foremost. Got to switch it over to our other graphics computer that I have all these uploaded on. 96 for a high temperature yesterday on Sunday. Our average high this time of year around 94 degrees, so it is an above average day, definitely by those standards. But compared to the record, we were nowhere near it once again, and we have not really gotten anywhere close to record-breaking territory as of recently. 106 for a high temperature for yesterday back in 1986. If you had that temperature paired up with the dew points that we currently have, it would be feeling like 120, maybe even a little bit higher than that in a select few areas. So very thankfully, we're not dealing with that big time heat. Record low back in 2009, 61 for yesterday, and our low temperature did not even come close to it, 75 degrees, which is 3 degrees above average. So definitely an above average day in terms of the morning low temperature and that afternoon high temperature. But also something we have not seen change as of recently. No rain recorded at Middle Georgia Regional Airport. Our year departure is now down close to 2 inches above where we should be this time of year, which is still a pretty good cushion and a pretty good amount over where we should be at this time of year. But that was really in thanks to two very, very wet months, the month of May and the month of June. July has just seen a steady tick down in that number. Sunrise yesterday, 6:41, and sunset was at 8:41. So a solid, if I'm doing my math correctly here, I believe about 14 hours of daylight that we did have yesterday. We're continuing to see that time frame get a little bit slimmer and slimmer. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, 16 plus 8, no, I believe that is 14 hours. Correct me if I'm wrong, but trying to do a little mental math right there. It's late in the shift, so my brain's a little bit jumbled already. So let's go into your July 2025 rainfall. We have still not recorded any rain really in the past week. And the days that we have recorded rain, it has been a very minimal amount. So far in the entire month of July, only 2/10 of an inch of rain. So our average rainfall that we typically get in July, around 4.83 inches, really close to 5 inches. And I imagine with the lackluster amount that we've had this month so far, that average all time has probably dipped a couple hundredths of an inch. But the record back in 1994, that doesn't even look like we're going to approach that territory of 18 inches back in the flood of 94. But we very well are probably not going to get to that even average mark for the month of July all time. We're really going to need a substantial amount of rain over the last 10 or so days of the month of July in order to hit that total. So your headlines for the week ahead: a hot start to the week. Widespread rain chances are going to kick off starting tomorrow, but it's still going to be a hot day. We'll talk about why that is. And then we will see a slight cool down. And when I say cool down, we're putting some air quotes around it because obviously it's still going to be hot this time of year, but a pretty substantial drop in the high temperatures should be in order. Let's take it to downtown Macon. I would show you the quad view, but it's going to be the same image all across central Georgia. Just a few clouds already popping up in the sky. Maybe a few scattered clouds are going to crowd the picture for the midday hour. But it's kind of hard to see if you really focus in on one of these clouds. You can see a little bit of a direction towards the right on the screen right here. We have a bit of a northwesterly breeze that's going to be an influence throughout today, and that's going to kind of drive our rain chances. Temperature-wise, upper 80s and near the 90-degree mark, even a 91 right there in Dublin at the highest. You will notice Vidalia is a bit an outlier. And of course, if you watched the morning show this morning, we were talking about how the sensor is not necessarily working correctly down there in Toombs County. So their dew point temperatures and their actual temperatures are not going to be accurate of what they're feeling. Obviously, there would have to be a pretty substantial reason for this number to be so much lower than the rest of the bunch. And mainly it would be in the way of rain. And you will see when we pop up the satellite and radar picture that we have no rain in the near vicinity. Already seeing a 90 in Jacksonville, so we're kind of matching our neighbors down to the south and the southeast. Also a 90 in Charlotte, 88 over in Charleston, 87 all the way up into Virginia Beach. Much of the south and the southeast is hovering somewhere in the 80s, but we have a couple 90s here in central Georgia already. In fact, Dublin is even 1 degree higher than Jacksonville, so I'm sure there's some localized areas that have some numbers that are a little bit higher than that, but as of right now, Dublin takes the cake for the warmest temperature so far across the eastern United States. So here's a look at your dew point temperatures. Yes, you can see one of these is not like the others. 50-degree dew point in Vidalia, a patch of no color down here in areas like Montgomery County over to Wheeler County, Trutland County, and we even see a 69-degree dew point over in McRae, which is closer to the actual value, but I believe their numbers aren't exactly accurate as well, because we see plenty of mid to upper 70s for our dew point temperatures and lots of that deep dark green color, which is of course influencing the feels like numbers. Plenty of triple digits already here before we get to the midday hour. We have a heat advisory today that I'm going to go ahead and give you a bit of a spoiler alert. The potential for feels like numbers up to 109 throughout today. Dublin's 1 degree shy of that already. They are feeling like 108 degrees. In fact, there are more triple digit numbers here on this map than we see double digit numbers. And if you are hovering in the 90s, there's still not much relief on that end. Feels like 98 in Eastman, 98 over in Swainsboro, 97 in Roberta, 98 in Thomaston, and a 99 in Macon. So yes, there are plenty of 100s, even some upper 100s like Gordon, getting into the mid 100s up in Milledgeville. It has been a hot start to the day, and mainly it has been because our temperatures climbed so high yesterday, and they were very reluctant to cool back down during the overnight hours. We were already starting out with feels like numbers at 89 degrees in Dublin at the 5 a.m. hour. Typically one of our cooler portions of the day. That was not necessarily the story this morning, and we have been pretty quick to rebound in light of some mostly clear skies. Talking about the winds and the wind gusts, this blue color, it was present in patches this morning, but now it's really widespread across all of central Georgia. Some occasional gusts already up to 18 miles per hour in Macon and up into Milledgeville and Baldwin County. So we are going to see our fair share of occasional gusts throughout today out of the northwest, maybe even upwards to about 20 to 25 miles per hour. And of course, if you do find yourself catching a scattered storm, of course, some of those gusts can get even higher in nature than that. But I've outlined the risk mainly for the window of sustained winds about 5 to 10 miles per hour, which you saw was the case on that current winds map, and the occasional gusts can get above 20 miles per hour today. So it's been a sizzling start that you just saw on the feels like temperature graphic. We do have the potential for some scattered storms. I think it's more so going to be scattered showers, but even less of a chance of seeing a storm throughout today. Really not impressive in the way of rain chances. That's kind of been the forecast as of recently. Just blistering hot and not much rain in the way of relief. So a high temperature of 97 today. That would be a degree above what we hit yesterday. So we're still continuing the above average train. And in fact, we continue to see an increase in those high temperatures as we go all the way into tomorrow. Then finally, we're looking at a bit of a drop off. So let's take a look at your heat index graphic. It looks like we're just going to be hanging out in the triple digits all afternoon and all the way into the evening. So right now seeing widespread triple digit numbers for what it feels like outside, and those shouldn't be going anywhere until we get sometime around 6 to 7 p.m. in a select few areas tonight. A couple areas that dodge the rain are going to hold on to those triple digit numbers probably until we get to 8 p.m. and then see a steady drop. But this meteogram might be picking up on some rain in the Macon area between 6 and 7 p.m. But the big thing is topping out at 106, and we typically know that this graphic doesn't depict the potential for the highest heat indices that we could see. So we'll talk about our heat advisory a little bit more. Feels like potential up to 109 today. I wouldn't even doubt that a couple areas exceed that given what some of the numbers are reading already before midday right now. This heat advisory going to go from noon until 8 p.m. So technically we still haven't even started it yet. Not to discount from the fact that it is still hot. It's just a select few areas are getting a little bit of an earlier start. And you will also notice that not all of central Georgia finds themselves in this heat advisory. So you may be asking yourself, why aren't areas like Upson County, Lamar County, going down to Taylor, Macon, Dooley, Crisp, and Wilcox County, why are we not finding ourselves in this heat advisory? It is still blistering hot. It's just the potential for seeing those feels like numbers up to 109 not looking as likely. You're still going to be hot. You'll probably have some feels like temperatures somewhere around 105, maybe just a little bit lower. And all in all, it's not going to really feel any different. You have a feels like temperature of 103 as opposed to 109. Yes, that 109 does feel a little bit more unbearable, but 103 is still bad enough itself. That's just why we have some counties left out of this. And the National Weather Service did outline a greater rain chance farther over to the west. Future View hasn't been picking up on that, but we'll take a look at what the latest model run says here in just a moment. So a quick reminder about these heat advisories and all these heat alerts that we will be talking about, at least today and tomorrow. And as we go into the future, hopefully we're not talking about this excessive heat warning, but we're very close to that criteria, in fact, today. So number one, what you need in order for these to get issued, you need confidence. So you can see the certainty percentage right here. You need an 80% certainty in order for a heat advisory or an excessive heat warning. A little bit less certainty for an excessive heat watch, but this is the same thing as an excessive heat warning. This is just issued a couple days in advance. So when things are looking pretty likely, but still about a 50-50 shot. One of two things need to happen in order for these to get issued. You need the actual air temperature to be 103 or 105 degrees, but we haven't seen temperatures get anywhere near those values so far in the summer season. It's really the humidity, the super swampy air that's influencing the feels like temperature. And for a heat advisory, you need widespread feels like numbers of 105 plus. For an excessive heat warning, it's just 5 degrees warmer than that, up to 110. Now, we're not expecting widespread heat indices of 110 today. An isolated area or two may climb up to that threshold, but you really do need widespread impacts of this and for them to last about an hour or two in duration. But this criteria, not the same across the entire United States. This is just our criteria here in central Georgia. So some areas farther to the north, they may have heat indices similar to us, but they may have a bit of an uptick in the wording and the warnings. They may have an excessive heat warning because they're not typically used to seeing some of the temperatures and the values of this threshold. But here in central Georgia, we're pretty accustomed to the summertime heat. So a couple reminders before we jump into your forecast. Obviously high temperatures in the upper 90s today, so you can go ahead and add a little bit of an increase to these concrete and asphalt temperatures. Take care of your pets along with yourself. I know obviously some of the dry areas and the dry portions of the first half of each and every day, you may be thinking, okay, it's not storming outside. I want to go take my pet on a walk. Well, those temperatures are already up there, somewhere into the at least low 90s. Concrete and asphalt temperatures are just going to be substantially warmer. Keep your pets insulated. Keep their paws insulated if you have to walk them on these hard surfaces. If not, I would recommend only giving them about a 5 to 10 minute break somewhere outside, maybe keeping them by a bowl of water or keeping them somewhere where there's some grassy areas that are not feeling as hot as concrete and asphalt. And take care of yourself. Remember the left side of your screen. If you're experiencing any of these symptoms, go ahead and make sure to take your breaks. Hydrate, hydrate, hydrate. Go inside, go in the AC, or take a break in the shade where it is a little bit cooler. You want to try to combat any of these symptoms you see on the left, because if you let them linger, it can lead to these symptoms on the right, which is symptoms of a heat stroke, and that's going to be a more severe heat illness. And obviously nausea and vomiting going hand in hand with each of them. But the big difference between the two, obviously you'll see some different wording according to what specific symptoms you are feeling. But the main one I want to point out is the excessive sweating. That's going to be a key indicator of heat exhaustion. That's what you just typically see when you're getting a little bit winded, you're spending a lot of time outside, you start to sweat a whole lot. If that sweat just continues to add up, then of course you need to make sure that you're taking a break inside. But a key indicator that you are experiencing a heat stroke as opposed to just general heat exhaustion will be no sweating. You will stop the sweat, and that's going to be a key indication. You'll probably start to even feel so hot that your body starts even getting some chills. I've had that happen to myself before. It is not a good feeling, so please make sure that you're taking care of yourself in this dangerous heat once again today. Now let's go to the satellite and radar picture. We have more clouds in the picture than we did this morning, just really down in areas like Wilcox and Dodge County. But any passing cloud cover will be a welcome sight because, of course, it will act as a blocking mechanism for that sunshine, maybe keep you a tad bit cooler, just give you an occasional break for some shade. But we really don't see much going on in the way of cloud cover for the first half of today. And there's not much going on in the deep south, the southeast, the eastern United States, however you want to word it. This is an updated surface map from this morning, so we do see plenty of high pressure down in the Gulf, over to the west of us along those Gulf Coast states of Louisiana and Mississippi. And that's going to continue to dry our atmosphere out relatively, but we're still locked in the sector of warm and muggy air, so we'll see that convective activity each and every afternoon, even despite the drier air that's present a little bit aloft. We do see a couple of sprinkles already getting going in the northern portion of the state, maybe southern Tennessee as well. But the big thing why I wanted to show you this graphic is this boundary up here to the north of us. Now this morning, this boundary was really stationary. It was a little bit farther up to the north. We've seen the eastern edge of this boundary kind of kick into motion. So now you see I drew a cold front right here, and that's going to continue to push down to the south. But it's really just going to be this portion of the frontal boundary, meaning that if it does come into central Georgia, it's going to be what we call those backdoor fronts. So that's going to kind of move over the Appalachian Mountains, come in from the north and the northeast as opposed to the north and the northwest, where these frontal boundaries do typically come in from. And when we had these backdoor fronts, they can usher in some slightly drier air, and they can also maybe even usher in some slightly cooler air. But that's going to funnel in from the north and the northeast. A bit of a wedge setup will take place. So the farther north and northeast that you live, you have the potential for more than likely seeing maybe some cooler temperatures. But in fact, all of central Georgia will see a good degree of some cooler temperatures heading into the midweek. That frontal boundary probably going to start making its passage sometime later Tuesday into early Wednesday. So go ahead and keep that in mind as we go throughout your forecast. 5 p.m. later this afternoon, actually seeing better coverage of some storms later this afternoon than the last model run did show. It doesn't look fairly widespread. It still looks really scattered in nature, but I do think the coverage is going to be a little bit greater than what we saw this morning, according to what this model run of Future View had. The timing, once again, looking like late afternoon all the way into the evening hours, and then we're already looking pretty clear by about the 9 p.m. hour. Well, obviously, you can't get set in stone with the timing that's popping up here on Future View just during this time of year, but just know that showers and storms are going to start funneling in from the north and the northwest throughout today. Now we go into Tuesday afternoon, a pretty quiet afternoon actually. We go all the way to 4 p.m., just our fair share of scattered showers, maybe even just scattered sprinkles. But as we go into the evening and nighttime hours, this is 8 p.m., we're starting to see some of these clusters grouped together, have more widespread impacts. They're probably going to operate off those outflow boundaries. So you know those minuscule features that we can pick up on the satellite and radar picture. Ben loves to spot them in the afternoon. They're going to be kind of your light green shaded areas that have a bit of an organization to it. It's just going to be a gust front that kind of separates itself from a pocket of an isolated storm or two. Well, if two of those start to interact with one another, they can create a lot of lift when they do clash with one another. So that's probably what we're looking at throughout tomorrow evening specifically, and even a couple of these really trying to cluster together into possibly even some strong to maybe even severe storms. Future View has us holding on to maybe even some more intense weather by 11 p.m. That activity is going to be very quick to weaken. As you see, we just flash forward 3 hours past that. 2 a.m. on Wednesday, we are all clear and good to go for the rest of the night. So once we go into the overnight hours past sunset, temperatures begin to cool down. They're not going to have as much to operate with as they would during the afternoon hours. But note that timing of the rain and keep that in mind as well, because you saw it wasn't really getting going until later in the day on Tuesday. So of course we're going to have the whole afternoon where we're going to warm up just about as warm as we can, very similar to today. Now let's go into Wednesday afternoon. Future View had no rain whatsoever as of the last model run. I came in early this morning and it was widespread showers and thunderstorms. So it does look like back-to-back model runs. It is kind of doubling down on the fact that we're going to remain predominantly dry on Wednesday. I'm still not completely sold on this. We're still going to be decently hot. We're still going to be decently humid. But I think it's really going to be all dependent on how far that frontal boundary, that backdoor front, does push into central Georgia. If it does push through the entirety of us, it will help keep our rain chances down to the south and the southwest of us, and it will usher in maybe some slightly drier air, some slightly cooler air. Not necessarily have all the features to work with as we would today and tomorrow. And you can see this breeze coming in from the north and the northeast, indicating that the frontal boundary is going to try to make its push maybe through the entirety of central Georgia, which would be a very beneficial thing. If we could get a day that is a little bit cooler, maybe even without rain chances, absolutely perfect for any afternoon plans that you do have. But of course, we're kind of getting into the time frame that we do need some rain, at least for the month of July. So we did just show you that rainfall graphic earlier in the stream. And yes, it has been an exceptionally dry July so far, only recording 0.2 of an inch of rain. If we could get some totals, at least get us maybe at least an inch or two of rain during the entire month of July, wouldn't be as bad, and we wouldn't be as much below average as what we could be. But right now we're on pace to maybe hover about 4.5 inches of rain below where we should be in the month of July. And of course, that would put a really big dent in that number that we saw, that year departure number, because we were hovering around 5 inches above where we should be at the beginning of the month after a very wet June. And we've virtually seen that number already cut in half, and it could just continue to dip lower. Future view goes all the way out to 3 a.m. on Thursday, and you guessed it, going to be a quiet overnight once again. Let's talk about some of those winds today. You will see widespread, not only just here in central Georgia, but we do see these pockets of maybe some red, some pink. So of course, when those showers and thunderstorms do try to make their push through central Georgia going into the evening hours, our fair share of gusty winds will be engulfed within them. The highest value that you see right now is only 22 miles per hour up here in Macon. But of course, we could have some isolated gusts that are going to be even gustier than that. And we're just not picking it up on any of these 4 locations we have right here. If I were to zoom this map in, it probably would give you a better picture. And that's actually a thought that did cross my mind this past weekend. I'm going to have to maybe give you a more localized view of some of these graphics in terms of the humidity levels, the feels like temperatures, and some of the winds that I'll probably work on throughout the rest of today. Now we go into Tuesday afternoon, where it's not terribly of a gusty afternoon, but once again, when some of those showers and thunderstorms start to group together off those outflow boundaries we were talking about, we could see a push of our fair share of some gusty winds once again tomorrow. And then Wednesday itself is just going to be more of a widespread breezy day because of that frontal boundary trying to push down into central Georgia, once again coming out of the north and the northeast. So trying to usher in some of that slightly drier and maybe even slightly cooler air. And of course, with the passage of a frontal boundary, we typically see a bit of an uptick in our winds. So it's all going to be dependent on how fast of motion that frontal boundary does have through our area. So showing you all those days of future view, the main day I want you to focus on is going to be tomorrow. Of course, we were talking about the first half of the afternoon. It's still looking predominantly dry. But once we get into the evening and nighttime hours, all of central Georgia is going to be in a level 1 out of 5 risk for some strong to severe weather for that time frame of the day. So most of the afternoon, probably your evening commute as well, should be good to go. But we want to cover the bases for any strong or maybe even potentially severe thunderstorms that pack a punch with gusty winds, frequent lightning, but also heavy rain. Obviously, you know the core of thunderstorms has its fair share of some heavy rain, but this heavy rain can kind of sit over the same areas for prolonged periods of time. Could even lead to some isolated flash flooding, which we'll have to keep a close eye out on for as well. And just reminding you, turn around, don't drown, don't try to drive through those puddles of waters. If they do start to pond up on the roads, make sure that you try to find an alternative route, especially if a whole entire roadway is flooded and underwater. You're not going to want to drive through that because a lot of times those puddles of water are a lot deeper than they do appear, and it only takes about 6 to 12 inches of standing water in order to sweep away a very small car, a little bit more for an SUV or maybe a truck, but still not something that you necessarily want to take a chance with and take a gamble on. So for the next 3 days, we'll talk about the next 2 days first because there is a lot of good news and you can kind of see it behind my head right here for Wednesday. 97 and 98 for high temperatures today and tomorrow. Once again, we have a better chance of seeing some rain at 60% chance of a shower or a storm on Tuesday, but that's mainly going to be for the evening to night time frame. Before that, we will see temperatures warm up just like they will later on this afternoon. But only about a 30% chance of a shower or a storm throughout today. We may see a little bit of an uptick in that, but the models vary from model run to model run. So it's really hard to nail down the coverage because each individual model that we're looking at says something different, and then Future View likes to change its mind with each update that it does get. But Wednesday is the day we have to look forward to. 91 for a high temperature. I never thought I would be rejoicing about a high temperature of 91. but it is going to be a far cry from what we're experiencing today and tomorrow. And obviously I have that 50% chance of a shower or storm on Wednesday. FutureView definitely was not picking up on coverage like that. But I did mention to you when I came in this morning, the model run that I saw had widespread showers and thunderstorms. So we'll continue to keep a close eye on that. Afternoon high temperatures, we're going to hang out in the low 90s after we get through today and tomorrow, Wednesday, Thursday, and then back closer to average as we go into Friday, but that's still not going to be bad whatsoever. It should keep us out of heat advisory criteria for Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. I do believe another heat advisory will likely get issued for tomorrow, just probably not going to have as big of an end range necessarily. Our heat advisory today is ending at 8 p.m. The one tomorrow will probably end sometime around 5 or 6 o'clock before some of the rain gets going. Our humidity map, it doesn't look like the humidity is going anywhere. You did just see a little bit of a glitch with this graphic though. It was trying to hint at the dew point temperatures going way down for Tuesday. And I wouldn't doubt that we start to see an update that we can get some slightly drier air in the forecast, because if we have that drier air in the forecast, it's really going to limit our rain chances for Wednesday. But right now, it's maintaining the idea and doubling down on the fact that we are going to have the swampy air present all throughout this week. Now let's go into the feels like numbers. These are obviously not the highest numbers that we will see today. We're already seeing values well above these. 106 is what it feels like in Savannah, good grief. But we can see widespread pink, and that's what you need to know. Feels like numbers that are going to be triple digits or above. Same story for your Tuesday afternoon. Maybe some areas like Macon, not quite as high as that, but the pink color is still very widespread. But Wednesday afternoon, feels like numbers in the mid 90s, possibly even into the upper 90s, but that pink color is nowhere to be seen. So that looks like we're going to have our first day of relief going into Wednesday. Now let's go into the long-range models. Rain chances still looking fairly impressive for Thursday because that backdoor frontal boundary will be interacting with a lot of tropical moisture. Remember that potential system we were talking about last week? Well, all that moisture did move onshore, kind of went up to the north and the northeast, and it's done a bit of a circle back around. So we're going to see another low pressure center establish itself in the northern Gulf as we go later into this week, going to create more widespread rain chances to the west of us. But a lot of those could creep into central Georgia until finally we get to Sunday and into Monday, which look to be our dry days in the forecast, but still kept a rain chance to cover any fluctuation. Still have to check in on the tropics, and there is a completely new area of development down in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. This is just northeast of South America to the east of the Lesser Antilles. So that's getting into Antigua, Barbuda, all the Virgin Islands and such, all of those kind of southern Caribbean islands. And right now, slim chances of developing, only 20% over the next 2 days and over the next 7 days. It is running into a portion of the Gulf where there's not as much Saharan dust. You can see plenty of it to the northeast of this potential system. And just taking a crack at the spaghetti models, talking about the possible track over the next few days, it does look like it will continue its westward push somewhere into the Caribbean Sea, and then past that, it is anyone's guess about what's going to happen with this. But of course, we'll keep a close eye on it because we can see storms that have a path through the Caribbean take a bit of a right turn all the way up into central Georgia, but this is nothing that you need to worry about as of right now. This is just something we're continuing to keep a close eye on. The big story will be the downtick in temperatures this week. I know your rain chances are looking fairly impressive, not the most conducive for outdoor plans. We'll continue to fine-tune them as we do get closer, but the combination of that backdoor front and some more widespread rain chances is going to create that downtick in temperatures. Obviously, highs near 90 that feel a little bit warmer are still going to be hot, but nowhere near in the neighborhood of what we're feeling on Monday, what we're feeling tomorrow. And as we head into the weekend, we look to have a pretty average summertime forecast, and I have the rain chances decreasing day by day, Friday into Saturday and into Sunday. So it is looking like later in the weekend going to be the most conducive for outdoor plans. A lot of folks starting school back next week, which is very hard to say. It feels like summer has flown by. I know this is kind of the last weekend to get in any of those fun summertime plans. So continue to try to plan them out right now. Obviously, these still aren't fairly impressive rain chances Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, but it's something you want to keep an eye out for. And of course, those numbers are going to feel warmer each and every day, with the exception of maybe Wednesday. Wednesday looks like it could be our best feeling day of the next week ahead, and that 50% chance of a shower or storm. I kept it at 50% because I think it's a 50-50 shot if we see widespread showers and storms as opposed to no showers and storms right now. 2 model runs in a row does make me think that we could see a bit of a downtick in this. But overall, it's all going to depend on how far that backdoor front does push through central Georgia. So we'll keep a close eye out on that as we get closer and closer, but continue to find good ways to beat the heat today and tomorrow, and keep your eyes peeled for tomorrow evening into the nighttime hours when we do have the potential for some stronger weather. That will do it for Monday's edition of your extended forecast. Like every single day, we'll be back here at 10:30 sharp tomorrow for a more in-depth look at the rest of the work week and what's in store for your weekend ahead.